Hi, this is for cultivating community and security in schools. And I wanted to start us off by just talking about some of the things, some thoughts about what's presently happening in schools around the country. So I want you to consider these photos. The first one is from 1923, and then the one is more recent on the right. It's standardized testing and how similar these look after 100 years. So we've been stuck, in my opinion, in kind of this traditional standardized education mindset for at least a century. We basically are thinking of kids as being identical creatures, identical beings, because the schedule, the way we approach education through a standardized system is largely built around the industrial age, when we were training people to work in the factories. Okay. This is pretty much an assembly line version of education that we've been doing. Now, me as a physicist, I think of this, and I'll call this the Newtonian mindset of education, the old way, the traditional way. But does this have to be the case? So imagine this. I want you to think about something. Think about your best friend or significant other. Okay, somebody you know incredibly well, but who isn't here at the moment. And how would you respond to this following question? Right at this moment in time, what mood or emotional state are they in? Now, as you think about this, I would suggest that we really don't know 100%, of course. We have no interaction. We can't observe them at the moment. So we can't be exactly sure what kind of mood they're in. But if you know them well, you could probably give odds of what mood they're in. You know, what are the chances they are happy or sad or angry or bored or whatever right at this moment? But that's the best we can do if we're not observing that person. The reason for this is people, human beings, we're complex, unique individuals. We have, I think of us as like a mixed bag of all these possible moods or emotional states at any given moment. And any one of these can pop out. And that's, if once we observe each other, once we see each other or talk to each other, and that's when one of these many, many possibilities kind of crystallizes. And that's the reality that we observe for that person. So it's a more complex kind of thing than trying to think of this, as kids or as adults, of us as being in a, identical to each other. That's kind of a ludicrous statement to make. So how and where we observe someone actually has influence over their moods and behaviors. By the way, for students, so does their ability to learn and their sense of security. Okay, so the how and where we observe someone, that influence that we have on each other and what moods we're going to be in. Okay, so think of this. All the meetings that all of us have to go to in our careers. What if you think about this? What if you're in a good mood before you walk into a meeting? Does that good mood last? Does the mood of the others in the room affect our mood, okay, your mood? Does the physical appearance and condition of the room affect our mood? And finally, does the subject matter of the meeting, how it's presented and discussed, does that affect our ability to learn, okay, our mood, our ability to participate or contribute to the meeting? If we agree that the appearance and condition of our environment, for example, affects our ability as adults, the mood that we fall into, the ability for us to learn, participate, contribute, and what is it for our kids? Well, for them, it's the appearance and condition of their classroom and school building, both internally and externally, that matters. It can affect their mood. It can affect their ability to learn and participate for that particular school day, or for a particular school year, for that matter. And this is where you all come in as architects. Now, the appearance of the room in the school, that overlaps with what we educators actually do within those spaces. So kind of like our daily experiment on our kids. When a student walks into the room, we don't know which them is going to show up. We don't know what kind of day they're having or what their last class period was like, or if they had an argument with their best friend right before they walk into our class. So we don't know what that is until they actually walk in. And that's when we observe them, and that's when the mood for the day kind of appears. But everything else has an influence on that mood. It can change. Okay, the moods of all of their peers and we adults in the classroom. Okay, the topic of the day for the lesson, the types of activities, the methods that we use. Does that click for a particular student or not? The assessments that we use. Okay, do we have any variety? We all know that if we go to into a room, into a class, or into a meeting, it's the same thing every single day. Yeah, that's going to get old really fast. And then, of course, the appearance and condition of the room. All of this contributes to how our children learn and behave and how healthy they are. And not just physically healthy, but intellectually healthy, emotionally, mentally, socially. All of that matters. All of that is affected by everything else. So the bottom line is, now if we start talking about the sense of safety and security in a school, the behavior and overall health of a student, of all the students, of their environment, determines how safe a school and its community are. Now, by the way, this thought of how we humans are always like a mixed bag, a mix, a superposition of all of these emotional and intellectual states, and then the observation, right? How we interact, the environment that we're in, and that helps bring out which we see. That's the premise of quantum science and what we know about atoms and particles. Maybe you heard of Schrodinger's cat or particle wave duality before. This is the same kind of idea. So the geek in me, the scientist in me, I can't help but think in terms of quantum mechanics. I think of all of us, including our students, our kids, as being quantum critters. And I call this the quantum mindset, a more modernized mindset that we should have for education. More modern view of how we should think about each other as human beings, as complex, unique individuals and not identical beings. So what are we presently dealing with? I just wanted to show you some data. Okay. And then as I show you this, think about the learning environments of any kind and consider the status that it has on what I would argue is your most important client if you're dealing in schools, which is our children. Okay, they're not just growing up anymore in an era of fire drills and tornado drills like we grew up with. We're required by law to do some number of active shooter drills in our schools, certainly in Illinois. Okay, you might not have heard of any of these, but there's already been 91 incidents of guns being shot on school grounds just this year. We still have another quarter to go. Okay, so when it comes to school shootings, those ones get all the press. We pay attention to the number shot and killed in the school shootings, but rarely, if ever, do you hear of the bigger problem with this. An analysis by the Washington Post of over 386 shootings since Columbine, some 356,000 kids, right? Elementary and middle school and high school kids were in the buildings, in the schools when those shootings occurred. Think about that. That lasts a lifetime. They're going to remember that for a lifetime. What is their sense of safety and security for their lives when they witness shootings when they're in school, when they're supposed to be safe and learning? This is a plot over the years since 1970 of the number of school shootings. Okay, massive increases, more than doubling since 2018. So more recently, it peaked coming out of COVID. This is perhaps the most disturbing one for me personally. The percentage, this is on CDC data, national survey of high school students feeling persistently sad or even hopeless. And you can see for different groups how there's a steady rise and then an acceleration just over the last few years. This is the present status of our kids in America. Okay. Percentage of US youth with major depressive episodes. Okay. That's a staggering increase over the last decade that's been happening. We have record levels, record numbers of kids who are anxious, on medications, depressed, even suicidal. It's about 20% of our kids have had suicidal thoughts in the past year. Now, this is from just surveying my own students. When I asked them what goes into their views of what a safe and welcoming school would look like, okay, what's involved in that? A relatively small percentage, okay, a smaller percentage, worries about the school shootings. It's sad but true. Our kids actually are just used to this idea that somebody can walk into a building with a gun. Okay, they've kind of accepted that, and that makes me, it just tears me apart inside as a teacher, as a parent. um, my students, they like the fact that we have a safety staff. Okay, they help in the hallways in particular, stop bullying and stop potential fights from occurring. But look at this, nearly all of them, for a safe and welcoming school, they just want to be themselves. They don't want to have to put on acts or wear costumes or play charades. They just want to be themselves. They want to be accepted. They want to be heard. They want to matter. It doesn't help that we adults politically right now are in the midst of this culture war going on. It's singling out different groups. Okay, that's horrible. It's a horrible feeling for our children. So if we want to be thinking in terms of making welcoming but also secure and safe schools, give our kids a sense of safety, it's an all hands on deck moment. Okay, this can't be done. There's no one thing that can be tweaked or reformed. This is a change in culture. This is a change in approach. It's a change in the mindset that's required because we're not identical beings. The standardization that we've had for the past century isn't working. Okay, certainly not for modern students. It hasn't worked for millions of kids over the years. It requires so many contributions from so many people. And it starts with that first day walking into a building. What does it look like? How welcoming is the building itself? The spaces inside the building? It's a holistic approach, is the only approach for this. So a dear friend of mine, Sherry Earle, this is her thoughts when I asked her. And Sherry was one of the first people into the building in Sandy Hook. She saw the bodies lying there. Safety is a function of interconnectedness. We must know each other. We must build buildings and communities that foster our connection to one another. Build buildings, build communities, build relationships. Everything that you do as you work with schools matters. Now, I'll leave you with this thought as we continue on with the presentation. We're going into an election year, and anytime school safety comes up, you're going to hear the politicians and administrators and a lot of community members talking about how we have to harden the schools. Okay, it's a short-sighted, short-term fix to a lot of people. It's not going to change the problems. It hasn't. The gun issue isn't going away. Let's try something different. Instead of hardening schools, let's try softening hearts. It starts with the environment. It starts with the moods of everyone involved. It's complex. We can do it if we all work together. And now I'll pass it on.